Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so today we're diving into something truly mind-bending. We are going to explore the unprecedented, massive kingdom and the profound wisdom of Hazrat Suleman, also known historically and theologically as Prophet Solomon. Now, when we talk about ancient kingdoms, we usually think of vast lands, massive human armies, maybe immense wealth, but the dominion we are unpacking today totally challenges the very limits of what a kingdom can actually be. We're talking about a ruler whose subjects included not just humans, but forces of nature, unseen spirits, and literally the animal kingdom itself.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at his role as heir to Prophet Dawood, his command over the unseen, the language of animals, his encounter with the Queen of Sheba, and finally, the illusion of power.
Let's jump right into part 1, heir to Prophet Dawood.
Just to set the stage, everything in our explainer today is pulled straight from the rich historical and theological narratives found in the classic text Qasas-ul-Anbiya. That translates to stories of the prophets, and let me tell you, it does an absolutely phenomenal job of capturing the epic, almost unfathomable scale of these ancient accounts. It really is our foundational roadmap for understanding the history we'll be breaking down today.
So, according to the source material, Suleman didn't just inherit your run-of-the-mill throne. He inherited both prophethood and kingship from his father, Prophet Dawood. But here's where it gets wild. He actually made a super specific, audacious prayer. He asked the divine for a kingdom that would be completely unmatched by anyone who would ever come after him. He wasn't asking for wealth just to be rich. He was asking for a dominion so incredibly vast that it would stand as an eternal testament to divine power in human history. And spoiler alert, that request was granted in ways that honestly defy human logic.
Which brings us to part 2, command over the unseen.
To even begin to wrap our heads around the true scale of his power, we have to talk about his workforce, specifically the Jinn. In the context of these ancient texts, the Jinn are supernatural beings from the unseen realm. They're made of smokeless fire, they exist right alongside humanity, and they typically possess physical capabilities way, way beyond ours. But in Suleman's kingdom, these wildly unpredictable, powerful entities were subjected to his absolute command. They literally had to serve his immense architectural and supernatural needs. And just think about the sheer physical labor these unseen forces were doing. We are talking about engineering feats that human beings back then, or honestly, maybe any era, simply couldn't pull off alone. The texts describe the Djinns constructing these towering sanctuaries and palaces. They were sent diving into the terrifying depths of the ocean to drag up pearls and treasures. They even forged cauldrons so unimaginably gigantic they were completely immovable. They were basically massive water reservoirs, not cooking pots. Imagine having a supernatural construction crew that never gets tired and is bound by divine decree to follow your blueprints perfectly. This creates an army composition unlike anything in history. On one hand, sure, you have traditional human soldiers, cavalry, infantry, the standard ancient military stuff. But on the other, legions of supernatural entities, Djinns, and even ranks of wild beasts, all marching together in unified ranks. The organizational logistics alone are just staggering. Suleman's generals weren't just managing guys with swords. They were coordinating across entirely different species and dimensions. So how do you even mobilize an impossible army like that? Well, he didn't just command the earth, he literally commanded the sky. The sources detail his absolute control over the wind itself. By his command, the wind would pick up his massive entourage, allowing him to travel a distance in a single day that would normally take a person on a camel an entire month. 1 month's journey done between dawn and dusk. This level of rapid deployment essentially made his kingdom omnipresent.
All right, let's zoom in a bit for part 3, the language of animals.
You know, you'd think a ruler with that much terrifying power might become detached, or maybe a bit of a tyrant. But despite having the strongest army on earth, Suleman's real wisdom shone through his deeply empathetic interactions with the tiniest creatures. He was granted this miraculous ability to actually comprehend the language of birds, insects, and animals, bringing an entirely new mind-blowing dimension to what it means to be a ruler of the earth. There's this one famous, striking narrative from the texts that captures this perfectly. Imagine this unstoppable army marching, humans, Djinns, birds, literally blocking out the sun. The earth is shaking. Yet, as they approach a valley, Suleman hears a tiny voice. It's the desperate warning of a single ant, shouting to her colony, "Oh, ants, enter your dwellings that you not be crushed by Suleman and his soldiers while they perceive not." And Suleman, he actually halts this massive, universe-bending army.
He smiles, amused and deeply moved by this little ant, and prays in gratitude for his blessings. He respected his right to life. Talk about the ultimate contrast between ultimate power and profound empathy. His connection to the skies was incredibly practical, too. He relied on the hoopoe bird, known as the hudhud, not just as a royal pet, but as a dedicated high-level intelligence gatherer for his global kingdom. The hoopoe essentially acted as an airborne scout and emissary, flying vast distances to survey territories and report back on foreign nations. This bird was a key operational asset in Suleiman's administration. Which leads us perfectly into part 4, the Queen of Sheba. It was actually the hoopoe bird that brought Suleman the intel about a wealthy sun-worshipping kingdom ruled by a very powerful woman, the Queen of Sheba. Now, a typical ancient king with Suleman's military might, they just invade. Simple as that. But Suleman utilized the awe-inspiring nature of his unique kingdom completely differently. He wanted to peacefully influence her and invite her to recognize the divine, leveraging his supernatural resources as tools of diplomacy rather than destruction. These diplomatic maneuvers show an absolute mastermind at work. First, he initiates contact by having the hoopoe literally drop a sealed letter right into the queen's lap. Such a precise, unexpected move. Second, the queen, being a wise ruler herself, consults her advisors and chooses caution, sending gifts to test him. But finally, when she eventually visits, Suleman doesn't just show off rooms full of gold. He has a powerful Jinn literally teleport her massive throne from her kingdom right into his palace in the blink of an eye before she even gets there. He backs up his diplomacy with a display of unseen power that no worldly monarch could ever match or comprehend. It wasn't about conquering her land. It was about conquering her heart and mind through sheer awe. And finally, we arrive at part 5, the illusion of power. Let's walk through this timeline because it is absolutely fascinating. Day 1, Suleman passes away, but he dies while standing up, leaning heavily on his wooden staff, overseeing the Djinns as they do their grueling labor. Weeks turn into months. The mighty Djinns, absolutely terrified of his discipline, just keep working. They have no idea the king who commanded them has already passed away. They don't even dare look him in the eye. As the months pass, a tiny creature, a termite, slowly begins to consume the wood of his staff from the inside. Finally, the staff becomes completely hollowed out. It snaps under the weight of his body and he falls. And only then is his death actually revealed to the world. This moment completely shatters the illusion of absolute worldly power. It proves a massive theological absolute from the sources. Even these supernatural Djinns, who mortals thought were all-knowing, did not actually possess knowledge of the unseen. I mean, if they knew the unseen, they would have immediately dropped their heavy stones and stopped working the very second he died. But they were fooled by a dead man leaning on a stick. And ultimately, it took a tiny termite, not some grand army, to unveil the truth. It's a huge reminder that ultimate knowledge and ultimate permanence belongs solely to the divine, not to any creation, no matter how powerful. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a really provocative thought to chew on. If the man who commanded the winds, spoke to the ants, and ruled over unseen spirits could be taken down by time, and his death revealed by a mere termite, what does that actually teach us about the limits and the temporary nature of even the most magnificent kingdom ever built? Worldly power, no matter how vast or supernatural it appears, is incredibly fleeting. It's definitely a fascinating perspective to carry with you. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into the source material, and keep questioning what you know.